Hello viewers and welcome to my new video. In today's video I'm going to be talking to you about how to book your own gig. So if you're in a band or you're a solo artist or anything in between, then a time might come when you might consider booking your own gig. Obviously that might happen for many reasons. Obviously majority of the time you might be aiming at engaging with a promoter who will basically put you on, but there may be occasions when either you might want to kind of organize your own gig because you know people who will come, and then maybe you want to be a headlining act or that kind of thing. So yeah, there's various reasons for that, but effectively if you want to do that, then stick around, because in this video I'm going to tell you exactly what to do step by step. But before I do that as well, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so that way you get a notification every time I post a new video. Okay, so let's get to it. The first thing that you will need to do is obviously you need to identify a place geographically where you want your gig to happen. So is it going to be in a town or city? Is it going to be a local gig to you or a further afield gig, but you need to obviously specify the location. Once you've specified the location, the actual geographical place, then the next thing is to find a venue. You need a venue for your gig. You need to be able to do it somewhere. So you have two choices here. It's either you've already explored certain venues, if it's say in your local area, or perhaps you played a gig at a venue that when someone else put a gig on and maybe you played at that gig, or you just a person who attends gigs yourself and you've basically been to quite a few of these venues, and then you will have a bit of an idea of which venue would be the most suitable for what you want to do. Now, a little bit of an advice here. Obviously you need to kind of consider the size of an artist that you are yourself or your band is at this moment in time. So what you don't want to do is say book a massive room somewhere, say 500 capacity or above, when your band isn't able to bring more than 100 people, for example, to the venue, because the result will be that basically your venue will look empty and it will just not look good, and the gig will not be as enjoyable as it could otherwise be. So always have a consideration to how big of an artist or how big of a band you are, how many followers you have, how many fans you have that will actually show up or potentially will show up to your gig. So that's the first thing. So once you've decided upon approximately the size, or by the size I mean the capacity of the venue, because that's what you need to keep in mind. It's the capacity, how many people can actually be admitted to that particular room, where you will be playing. Once you know the capacity, then obviously the research time comes in, because say for example if you don't know these venues, or even if you know which venues you may have in mind, you need to then go on the internet, or even to identify them in the first place you will need to go, if you have a particular city or town in mind. For example, you might do it through Facebook, through other social media platforms or websites basically, and try and identify what gigs are happening in your local area, for example, and which venues. Once you've identified that, have a look at photos. I think that's really advisable. If they have a gallery of photos on the website or the Facebook page, try and go on that, have a look what it actually looks like with the audience in. Do they have a stage, do they not have a stage? Because what you will find is that there's many venues that don't even have a stage if it's like a really small venue. So effectively what that means is that a band would just be standing on the floor on the same level as the audience. So again, that's something to consider if that could be an issue to you. If you prefer a venue with an actual stage, then obviously go for that. Check those photos. The next thing would be to identify contact details for those venues. So you need to either find them on Facebook, Instagram, places like that. Some of them will have their own websites, email addresses, telephone numbers, things like that. So collect all that, make sure that you've got that. Once you've identified a venue or a couple of venues, maybe leave yourself a bit of a choice, contact them and ask for the details of how to hire a room for a gig, because one thing that you need to consider is the price, and this is where my next point comes in about budgeting, but I'm gonna be talking a little bit more about budgeting in a minute. But firstly, check the price for hiring the actual venue. Just think about whether that is a good enough price for you. Are you gonna be able to afford it? Hopefully without making any losses and that kind of thing. The second thing that you will need, and actually I'm going to stick to that budgeting theme, because the second thing that you will need is a sound engineer. Okay, so somebody in that venue will have to come and do the sound for you, your band, other bands, that kind of thing. So some venues, they will basically charge you and they will tell you this is how much you have to pay for hire, but this may include a sound engineer, whilst some other venues might say, oh, this is just for hiring the room, but you have to provide your own sound engineer. All right, so that's something to consider when they quote you the prices, and you need to make sure that you've got it all covered. Okay, now once you figure that out, then the next thing would be to check with them if they supply backline. Okay, so drums, guitar cab, bass cab, those types of things, because some venue will and some venue won't. So you need to make sure, because if they don't, for example, well, that kind of brings another challenge, I suppose, to sort out, that you will need to take care of organizing the backline effectively. So either your own band, that's a good tip actually, if you can do it as your own band and supply it for other bands, that's great. Another idea would be to share that responsibility with the other band, so you need to agree that in advance and basically say, okay, we will supply a drum kit, but you supply a bass cab, someone else supplies a guitar cab or cabs, that kind of thing. Okay, so when you figured that out and you know the price, then the next thing is to, well, identify who is going to be playing at your gig, so it's most likely not just going to be a single band that is going to be playing. So you need to find, so if your band, for example, is going to be headlining that gig, you will need to identify your supporting bands. Okay, so that's something else. So you need to obviously think about the genre you're playing. You may already know some bands, may be friends with some bands, so it might just be a matter of contacting your mates, asking them to kind of come along and play. If not, that might be a matter of finding new bands. Again, same idea, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, you name it. What you may want to consider in finding your support bands is, are these going to be local bands or traveling bands? Because again, when we talk about budgeting, you need to make sure that you will be able to kind of cover at least the costs of travel, that kind of thing. So make sure that you will be able to afford it, after paying for the venue hire, sound engineer, providing the backline, whatever that might be. If there's any additional costs like marketing, advertising the gig, anything like that, you need to obviously include that all. And then when you invite the bands, always make sure that they agree with them in advance how much you are kind of considering to pay them. And if that's not possible, then maybe sort of agree a range, and yeah, basically just make sure that it doesn't sort of blow your budget, and the bands the supporting bands perhaps do not travel from too far afield. The next thing is all the flyers, leaflets, advertisement effectively. So what you need to probably do is do an event page on Facebook. Start thinking about the image, the poster, whether you are going to be using any physical flyers for that gig, or any posters, or whether it's just going to be all online. So just make a decision on that. Obviously, again, if you are going to be printing any physical flyers, then obviously you need to consider that within your budget. And then the next part would be, you know, obviously to, you know, do the design. So either you yourself, or you need to find somebody who will be able to do a design for you, for the event page, for any flyers, for any posters, so that people can find out that you know you're putting that gig on and it's actually happening, and they know. You know, important thing to cover obviously is who's playing, where. You know, always remember, you know, put the venue on, venue address. You may want to even on your event page put like a map from, you know, Google Map or any other source, and time, you know, start time, end time, you know, anything like that. Perhaps links to public transport, you know, that kind of thing. Parking spaces near the venue, you know, because all that is important in terms of information that you give to people, so they know what they need to do. Something else that you might consider is who is going to be. Oh, well, let me start from saying, actually, are you going to be selling tickets in advance, or is it just going to be a pay on the door type of gig? Okay, so that's something important, right? So if you consider selling tickets in advance, you may want to go with one of these companies that basically do that, and you will need to kind of set yourself up with them so they can sell tickets on your behalf. The other, then you can have like a split option, like some, you know, if people don't buy enough tickets in advance, or i.e. your gig doesn't sell out, then you may have another option of for people to paying when they actually arrive at the venue, you know. And what you might want to consider in that case also, this is a bit of an incentive, is that those tickets, pre-sale tickets, might be a little bit a bit less expensive, and then on the door price might be a little bit higher, so that might actually motivate people to get those tickets in advance as well. Something else to be mindful of is who is going to be doing your door on the day, whether or not you need any security or anything like that. If it's just a small gig, the likelihood is that you won't, and the venue might actually already cater for that within the higher price. But ultimately, if you are charging people on the door for coming in, then somebody will have to do that. It might be yourself, somebody from your band, or you may ask a friend or hire somebody specifically for that task. Something good to do if you've never been in that venue before, maybe do a bit of a recon, you know, i.e. Go to that venue actually before the gig, so maybe, I don't know, a couple of weeks beforehand, have a look at what it looks like, where things are, familiarize yourself with everything. Maybe also think about anything like merge stores, like where are they going to be, you know, is there enough room for them, you know, and so figure all these things out in advance, you know, try to be prepared. Something else that is good to think of is how you're going to identify people who have already paid for the gig versus those who haven't paid, okay? Because you need to be able to monitor that somehow. You know, a really good idea is to buy a batch of wristbands effectively and put them on people's wrists as they come through. So if they confirm, I've already paid online, for example, you know, give them a wristband. If they pay you on the door, give them a wristband as well, you know. That way, if they come in and out, for example, through the door, then you know, can I see your wrist? Okay, there you go, there's a wristband, no problem, you know, you can let them in. But that way you definitely ensure that nobody you know, goes in free, you know, so you're not losing any money, you know, on people who are you know, watching the gig. Because again, like I said about budgeting before, you know, if you have agreed any you know, payments for the other bands and that kind of thing, you need to make sure that you will be able to do that, so you don't want to be out of pocket, you know, after this. So yeah, on the day itself is basically, you know, running the actual gig, but I might actually do a separate video on that if that's something that you are interested in. If this video has been helpful to you, then please leave me a comment below, tell me what you think, or maybe you have some other tips in terms of how to book a gig, and I'll see you in my next video.